that King Saul gives him. He takes it off. He said, I'll go in the name of the Lord of Israel. I will have nothing to do with the armament of man. I will go in the name of the Lord of Israel. And this day he will deliver the Philistine into my hand. He takes 5 stones. Well, that's not 5 little stones. It means grace. It's a gift. 5 is the number of grace in Scripture. That's the only armament that he takes. Well, I think you're familiar with the story. He brings down the giant with the first blow into the folly. Having no sword, he takes the sword of the giant and severs his head. And then he comes back with the severed head of the giant. The king turns to his lieutenant Abner. He said, Abner, whose son is that youth? And Abner answered, as thy soul liveth, O Lord, I cannot tell. He said, inquire whose son the stripling is. And then comes David with the head of the giant, holding it in his hand. And Abner brings him before Saul and presents him before Saul. And Saul turns to David and he said, whose son are you, young man? And David answered, I am the son of thy servant Jesse, the Bethlehemite. You will note in all of these passages that Saul is inquiring not about David, but about David's father. Whose son are you, young man? Inquire whose son the youth is. Inquire whose son the stripling is. Now the word youth, young man, stripling, lad are all from the same word in Hebrew. Elam. That's the word. But it also means to conceal, to hide from view, to veil a secret. The words are right. It's a youth. It's a lad. It is a young man. But it's something veiled, something concealed. It's a secret that is hidden. Something out of sight. He placed him in man. That in the fullness of time, it is that is hidden in man that will reveal man to himself as God. For no one knows the Father but the Son. And no one knows who the Son is but the Father. So without the Son, you will never know that you are the Father. So then you start reading Scripture. So he takes the book, and he begins with the law of Moses. Then he comes through the prophets. Then he comes into the Psalms, and he interprets to them, in all the Scriptures, the things concerning himself. And he shows them exactly what was said in Scripture. That this is the great rabbinical principle, that what is not written in Scripture is non-existent. He is not interested in what Caesar's world does. He makes no attempt to change the pattern. If there were slaves in the day in which a man walks, when it happens in him, he leaves it just as it is. He is not concerned with changing governments and changing things. As he finds them, he leaves them. But he tells the eternal story. For the Old Testament, which is that prophetic blueprint of the story, as told us in the New Testament, is simply a shadowy intimation, or I would say intimations, for there are many shadowy intimations, of this eternal reality. It's something that is timeless. It is taking place forever and forever and forever. It didn't take place once and forever 2,000 years ago. It is taking place in the unexpected breast of man or woman. And when it happens, he is awed. He is stunned. He goes back and he searches the Scripture, and he finds it. It's there. It was always there, but he didn't see it. It was always in Scripture, but man saw it differently because he was told it as a story, that he may enter in at the lowly door because of his consciousness, away down on this level. So as the poet said, all was foretold me, not could I foresee. But I learnt how the wind would sound after these things should be. Yes, the whole was foretold me. Well, if the Bible is, as it claims, thousands of years old, and I read it after the event, and having experienced the wind, the unearthly wind that accompanied the series of events, then I go back but it's all in Scripture. But I didn't see it. But I didn't see it until it happened in me. When the whole thing erupted in me, then I went back and I could see the whole pattern was there all along, just as the poet said. All was foretold me, not could I foresee. But I learned how the wind would sound after these things should be. And there they were. Everything was there. David and his father was set free. For the promise was made, the man who destroys the enemy of Israel, I will set his father's house free in Israel. And the father's name was Jesse. And Jesse simply means Jehovah exists. That's the literal translation of the word Jesse. Any form of the verb to be. In other words, I am. God's eternal name. So you discover that you yourself are the father of the youth who destroyed the enemy of Israel. And the only enemy of Israel is a false god.